Hello there, and welcome to my channel. I'm so glad you found your way here today. Today we sit with one of the stranger companions you carry through every hour of your life, the feeling that arrives without invitation and somehow already knows. You have felt it. A decision settles in you before you can say why. A sense of yes or no, of toward or away, that seems to come from somewhere older than thought. We tend to call it instinct or the gut, and we treat it as a kind of small mystery we are not meant to solve. But it can be understood, and the understanding only deepens the wonder. And before we begin, if these calm explorations are something you enjoy, consider liking and subscribing. It helps others find their way here too. Now, let's begin. Picture a chess player glancing at a board and reaching for a piece before she could explain her reasoning. The move was correct. Her mind had been working the whole time beneath the surface, finishing a calculation she never consciously began. This is what a gut feeling truly is. Not a message from beyond, but the visible edge of an enormous hidden process. Arriving as a sensation because the answer reached you before the reasons did. What feels like knowing without thinking is really thinking you were never invited to watch. Consider how quickly you flinch from a shape on the path. Before you know it is a snake. Your foot is already moving, your heart already racing. And only a heartbeat later does the slower part of your mind arrive to announce calmly and a little late that yes, there is a snake. Inside the brain, incoming signals travel more than one road. A rapid, ancient pathway carries the rough shape of a threat almost instantly toward the structures that prepare your body to react, while a slower route delivers the same information to the thinking cortex for careful identification. The fast road sacrifices detail for speed, handing you a verdict before the evidence has finished arriving. This is why a feeling so often precedes a thought. The body has already chosen by the time the mind sits down to deliberate. Your gut feeling rides this older road, the one evolution built when reacting a fraction of a second sooner was the difference between living and not. We like to imagine ourselves as creatures who think and then feel. Far more often the order runs the other way. There is a reason the feeling settles where it does. Not in your hands, not behind your eyes, but low in the belly, a tightening or a flutter that language reaches for and calls a knot. For a long time we assumed this was only figurative, a poetic way of locating an emotion somewhere physical. It is not only figurative. Lining the walls of your digestive tract is a sprawling network of nerve cells, hundreds of millions of them woven through the gut and in constant conversation with the brain above. This system is so extensive that researchers describe the gut as having a nervous system of its own. When you sense something is wrong and feel it in your stomach, real signals are traveling that pathway, carrying the body's state upward into awareness. The phrase was never just an image. It was a quiet, accurate report of where part of your knowing actually lives. The language of the body, it turns out, was telling the truth all along. A nurse walks past a patient she has seen 100 times and pauses, certain something has changed before she can point to a single sign. Her certainty is not a gift from nowhere. Beneath it lies a vast collection of remembered faces, remembered breathing, the countless small variations of how a person looks when well and how they look when something turns. Most of intuition works this way. The mind quietly gathers patterns across years of experience, far more than you could ever consciously hold, and stores them somewhere wordless. When a new moment closely matches an old one, recognition fires instantly, and the match arrives as a feeling rather than a memory you can name. You do not remember the 1,000 prior instances, you only feel the conclusion they have shaped. This is why intuition grows richer with experience, and why it is strongest in the things you have done most often. What looks like a mysterious inner voice is in large part the steady accumulation of a life retrieved faster than you can follow. Set a grandmaster before a board for 5 seconds, then sweep the pieces away and ask her to rebuild it. She will place them almost perfectly, every piece returned to its square, as if she had photographed the scene. Show a beginner the same board, and he will manage only a scattered handful. Yet something strange happens when the pieces are arranged at random, in positions no real game would ever produce. Now the master does little better than the novice. Her gift was never raw memory. Across years of play, she has absorbed an immense library of meaningful arrangements, tens of thousands of recurring shapes and clusters. And when a real position appears, she does not see 30 separate pieces, but a few familiar formations. She already understands. A strong move surfaces in seconds, because she is not calculating it fresh, she is recognizing it. This is the quiet engine beneath expert intuition everywhere. The slow conversion of experience into instant sight. The feeling of just knowing is the feeling of a pattern coming home. Deep inside the brain sit two small almond-shaped structures that act as the body's earliest alarm. They do not wait for certainty. Long before the slower reasoning parts of the mind have finished deciding what you are looking at, these structures can read the rough outline of danger and begin sounding the warning, releasing the rush that quickens the heart and tightens the chest. Researchers have watched this unfold in the brain, the alarm firing in response to a frightened face flashed too briefly to be consciously seen at all. The person reports noticing nothing. The body responds anyway. This is the architecture beneath that sudden, wordless unease, the feeling that something is wrong before you can say what. Your alarm system was built to act first and explain later. Because in the world that shaped us, the cost of a false alarm was small, and the cost of hesitation could be everything. The fear arrives before the reason. That is not a flaw, it is the design. We tend to imagine that the purest decision would be a coldly logical one, stripped of all emotion, weighing only the fact. The neuroscientist Antonio Damasio met people who lived close to that ideal, and what he found overturned the assumption entirely. His patients had suffered damage to the regions where emotion and reasoning meet. Their intellect remained intact. They could discuss options, list pros and cons, reason flawlessly in the abstract. Yet faced with an ordinary choice, even something as small as which day to schedule an appointment, they would stall endlessly, circling every consideration without ever arriving anywhere. Without the quiet emotional waiting that tells us this feels better, then that reason alone had nothing to lean on. The feeling that a choice is right turns out not to be a distraction from good judgment, but a necessary part of it. Strip away the gut entirely, and the mind does not become sharper. It becomes lost in its own endless deliberation, unable to choose at all. Out of that work came a quiet and elegant idea about how the body guides the mind. Each time, a choice leads somewhere, to relief or to regret, to gain or to loss. The experience leaves a faint physical trace, a bodily signal linked to that outcome. Over a lifetime, these markers accumulate, attaching themselves to the kinds of situations that produced them. So when a similar moment arrives again, the body offers its quiet vote before you have consciously weighed anything, a subtle pull toward or away that reflects how things went the last time. The proposal is that emotion does not interrupt rational choice, but narrows it, dimming the options that once led to pain, so the mind can focus on the rest. You feel the steering before you understand it. Researchers still debate the exact mechanism, and honesty requires saying it remains a model rather than a settled fact. But it captures something many of us recognize, the sense that the body remembers consequences the conscious mind has long since filed away. Imagine sitting at a table with 4 decks of cards, drawing one at a time, some giving rewards and some delivering steep losses. 2 of the decks are quietly rigged against you, ruinous over time. 2 are gentler and safe. Nobody tells you this. You simply play turning card after card, trying to come out ahead. In a now famous version of this experiment, players had sensors placed on their skin to measure the faint stress response that rises beneath awareness. and something remarkable appeared. After only a handful of draws from the dangerous decks, the player's skin began to react, with a small flicker of warning each time their hand hovered over them, well before they could say which decks were bad, and even longer before they consciously avoided them. The body learned the pattern first. The hand grew cautious before the mind understood why. Here, captured in a quiet laboratory measurement, was the gut feeling itself forming in real time, knowing the danger before the person did. A fire commander leads his crew into a burning building, and standing in a room that seems ordinary enough, he is suddenly seized by a certainty that they must get out now. He orders everyone back. Moments later, the floor they had been standing on collapses, the fire having been raging unseen in the space beneath. Asked afterward how he knew, he could not say. It felt, he reported, like a sixth sense. When researchers studied accounts like his, they found no magic, only expertise compressed beneath awareness. The room had been too quiet for that much heat, the fire behaving in ways that did not match the picture his years of experience had built, and his mind registered the wrongness as a feeling, because the mismatch surfaced faster than the explanation. Nurses described the same thing at a bedside, a conviction that a patient is failing before the monitors agree. Have you ever felt certain something was off without being able to point to why? That feeling is not nothing. In the practice, it is often everything. Here is a thought that quietly rearranges how you understand your own mind. You do not simply perceive the world as it arrives. Your brain is forever running just ahead of the present, predicting what is about to happen, generating its best guess of the next instant, and then checking that guess against what actually comes. You feel this whenever you reach for a glass, and your hand arrives already shaped to its size, or when a song pauses and you sense the missing note before it sounds. Most of this forecasting never reaches awareness. It runs silently, a continuous undercurrent beneath ordinary experience. And when one of these predictions carries weight, when the brain forecasts something that matters, it can surface as a feeling rather than a thought, a sense that this will go badly, a pull that this is the right turn to take. The gut feeling in this view is a prediction breaking through into consciousness, the mind's quiet wager on what comes next, delivered as sensation because it formed before language could reach it. You are not only living in the present moment. Some part of you is always leaning into the one that has not yet arrived, and intuition is the sound of that leaning made briefly audible. Step into a kitchen you have never visited, and within a moment you know roughly where the cups are kept, how the stove will work, which drawer likely holds the knives. You have never been here yet, almost nothing surprises you. This quiet competence is intuition doing its steady invisible work. Behind every new moment the mind is running a silent comparison, holding the present scene against an immense store of past ones, thousands of kitchens, thousands of conversations, thousands of faces met and read. When the match is close, the feeling of familiarity arrives, and with it, a sense of what to expect and how to act. You do not consciously search this library. The relevant memory simply rises to meet the moment, fast and wordless, shaping your sense of a situation before you have consciously appraised anything at all. This is why experience changes not just what you know but what you feel, why a place or a person can strike you as right or wrong before reflection begins. The instinct is real. Its source is the accumulated record of everywhere you have already been quietly consulted in the space of a breath. What feels like reading the present is often the present being read through the whole of your past. You meet someone new, and the conversation is perfectly pleasant, and yet you walk away with a faint discomfort you cannot justify. Nothing was said, nothing went wrong. Still, something in you stayed wary. Often the answer lies in a flicker, too brief to catch. The human face can betray a feeling in a fraction of a second, a fleeting expression that crosses it and vanishes before the person can suppress it, a momentary tightening or a flash of something that does not match the friendly words. These fleeting expressions can pass too quickly for conscious notice, yet the watchful ancient machinery of your social brain registers them anyway. It cannot tell you in words what it saw, so it hands you a feeling instead. A small note of caution that arrives without a reason attached. This is part of why we sometimes distrust a smile we cannot fault, or feel safe with someone before they have proven anything. Your conscious mind heard the words. A deeper part of you watched the face. And when the two disagree, it is often the face read below awareness that leaves the truer impression behind. Not all gut feelings deserve equal trust, and the difference between the ones that guide you well and the ones that mislead comes down to a single quiet condition. Intuition is built from experience, but not just any experience will do. It needs a particular kind, the kind that comes with clear and honest feedback, where you act and then learn soon afterward whether you were right. A weather forecaster receives this. Each prediction meets reality within a day, correcting the inner model again and again, until the sense of an approaching storm becomes genuinely reliable. A nurse on a familiar ward receives it too. But some domains never offer this clean loop, where outcomes arrive late or tangled with too many other causes, or never clearly at all. The mind cannot calibrate, and the resulting intuition may feel just as confident while being far less sound. This is the quiet rule beneath trusting your gut. Ask not only how strong the feeling is, but whether the part of you producing it has ever been properly taught. Confidence and accuracy are not the same thing. Intuition earns its reliability only in the places where the world has patiently corrected it. Again and again over time, there is a kind of intuition that feels exactly like the trustworthy kind, and is not. Picture two people watching the same rising and falling market, each struck by a strong sense of where it will move next. One has spent decades in a domain that genuinely rewards pattern reading. The other is reading a system shaped largely by chance, where yesterday's pattern carries little weight for tomorrow. Both feel certain. Both experience the same inner conviction. But only one of those feelings was built on ground solid enough to learn from. In environments that are stable and regular, intuition sharpens with practice. In environments ruled by randomness and noise, the mind still finds patterns, because finding patterns is what it does. Yet those patterns are often illusions, and the confidence they produce is just as vivid as real knowing. This is the quiet trap. The feeling of expertise can flourish even where no real expertise is possible. The danger is not that intuition is weak, but that it does not announce when it is operating beyond its depth. It speaks with the same steady voice, whether it is right or merely sure. Everything that makes a gut feeling quick is also what makes it fallible, and the two cannot be cleanly separated. To deliver an answer in an instant, the mind takes shortcuts. It leans on what comes most easily to memory, judges the whole by a vivid part, lets the first impression color all that follows. These mental shortcuts are not defects so much as the price of speed, the trade the brain makes to act before deliberation would be possible. Most of the time they serve well enough, but each one bends in a predictable direction, and that bending is what we call bias. A risk feels larger because a dramatic example springs easily to mind. A stranger feels trustworthy because something about them is merely familiar. The very smoothness of intuition is part of the danger, because a biased judgment does not feel biased from the inside. It feels exactly like clear sight. There is no warning light, no inner sense that a shortcut was taken. This is why fast thinking, for all its quiet brilliance, cannot be the final word on its own. The same machinery that lets you read a room in a glance can, just as effortlessly, mislead you with complete conviction. The psychologist Daniel Kahneman offered a way of picturing the mind that has quietly reshaped how we understand ourselves. Imagine two ways of thinking living side by side inside you. One is fast, automatic, effortless, the source of the answer that simply appears when you glance at an angry face or read the words on a sign. It runs constantly, asking nothing of you, producing impressions and intuitions on its own. The other is slow, careful, effortful, the part you summon to work through a difficult sum or weigh an unfamiliar decision. It is reluctant, easily tired, and switched on only when needed. Most of life is steered by the fast one, with the slow one stepping in to check or override when something feels off. The trouble is that the fast system is confident even when wrong, and the slow system is lazy and often defers without examining. Much of clear thinking, Kahneman suggested, lies in knowing which problem belongs to which system. Some moments truly call for the gut, formed by experience and faster than thought. Others quietly demand that you slow down, distrust the easy answer, and let the deliberate mind do the work the intuitive one cannot. In the first few seconds of meeting a person, before a real conversation has even begun, you have already formed an impression of them, warm or cold, capable or not, someone to lean toward or hold at a distance. It happens almost against your will. What is strange is how often these instant judgments turn out to align with what slower acquaintance reveals. Studies have shown that brief glimpses of a person, sometimes only seconds of watching them move or speak, can yield reads on their character that match the assessments of people who know them well. The fast social brain is genuinely good at this, distilling a great deal from very little. And yet the same speed that makes it impressive also makes it fragile. The very first impression can lock too early, anchoring on a stray detail, a resemblance to someone else, a mood that had nothing to do with the person at all. So the snap judgment is neither to be trusted blindly nor dismissed. It is a fast and often able guess, sometimes remarkably true, sometimes confidently mistaken. And the wisdom lies in holding it lightly until time can tell you which it was. There is something humbling in how little the mind sometimes needs. Researchers have repeatedly found that a thin sliver of behavior, a few seconds glimpsed, can carry nearly as much truth as hours of careful study. In one striking line of work, observers watched silent video clips of teachers, just brief moments with no sound, and rated their effectiveness. Those snap ratings, drawn from seconds of soundless footage, closely matched the evaluations given by students who had spent an entire term in those classrooms. The same has been found across many domains, where a fleeting sample reveals what we assume only long acquaintance could. This capacity has been called thin slicing the mind's gift, for reading a whole from a fragment, extracting a reliable signal from the briefest exposure. It is intuition at its most efficient, and it suggests that much of what matters about a person or a situation is broadcast continuously, written into posture and tone and small unguarded movements. The deeper lesson is not that first impressions are always right. It is that your fast mind is gathering far more from far less than you ever consciously notice, and quietly handing you the result. We inherited a long habit of setting feeling against thought, as if emotion were the unruly element that clear reasoning must overcome. The closer science looks, the less that division holds. An emotion seen plainly is a kind of fast appraisal, the body's swift summary of what a situation means for you, delivered as a feeling, because a feeling can be acted on immediately. Fear is information about threat. Disgust is information about contamination. The warmth of trust is information about safety. Each arrives compressed ahead of analysis, carrying a verdict the slower mind can then examine or refine. Rather than the enemy of good judgment, emotion turns out to be one of its essential ingredients, the part that assigns weight and urgency to the bare facts, so the mind knows what to care about. Recall the patients who could reason but not decide, their feelings severed from their thoughts, left circling forever. Emotion is what lets a decision finally settle. So the old picture quietly inverts. Reason does not work best alone and unfeeling. It works best in conversation with the gut, listening to what the body has already understood and then deciding what to do with that understanding. There is a strange clarity that comes in a frightening instant, a feeling many people describe as time slowing down. A car begins to skid, and suddenly the world arrives in vivid detail. The wet sheen of the road, the exact angle of the wheel, everything else falling away. This is fear doing something other than panicking you. When the body senses real danger, it can sharpen the senses and pull attention tight around the threat, dropping the irrelevant edges of the scene so that the mind can pour itself entirely into what matters most. The slowing of time is partly an illusion of memory, the moment laid down so richly that it seems in recollection to have lasted longer than it did. But the focusing is real. The same surge that quickens the heart also narrows the lens of attention onto the single detail that might save you. This is intuition's protective edge. The gut not as vague unease, but as a sudden total concentration. Fear at its best is not the loss of clear thought. It is the body clearing everything away so that one thing can be seen. We tend to imagine the brain as the commander and the body as the obedient follower, instructions flowing downward from the mind to the limbs and organs below. The actual wiring tells a humbler story. Running between the brain stem and the body's interior is a long wandering nerve, a great trunk line of communication threading down to the heart, the lungs, the gut. And along this pathway, the traffic runs mostly upward. The clear majority of its fibers carry signals from the body to the brain, not the other way around. Far more is being reported up than commanded down. Your organs are forever sending word of their condition, the state of the gut, the rhythm of the heart, a steady stream of bodily news flowing into the brain beneath all awareness. This is the channel through which a feeling in the stomach becomes a feeling in the mind. The brain is not issuing orders so much as listening constantly, taking in the body's report and weaving it into your sense of how things are. Much of what you call mood and much of what you call intuition begins as this quiet message rising from below. Beneath every choice you make runs a quiet bodily current you rarely notice. Your heart is beating, your breath moving, your gut shifting, each sending its faint signal upward, and together they form a background hum that colors your inner state moment to moment. The brain reads this hum continuously and folds it into how a situation feels. A racing heart can make a decision feel more urgent. A tightness in the chest can lend a choice, a shadow of dread. A settled and easy breath can make the same option feel safe and right. This is why the same decision can feel different depending on whether you are rested or frayed, calm or wound tight. The body's condition becomes part of the feeling woven into the verdict, without announcing itself. Researchers studying how we sense our own internal states have found this undercurrent shaping judgment in ways the conscious mind never sees. The gut feeling, then, is not formed in some sealed chamber of pure thought. It rises out of a living body, flavored by the steady, unspoken report of everything happening inside you, in the very moment the choice arrives. Here is a quiet test you can almost picture. Sit still, say nothing, and try to count your own heartbeats without touching your pulse, feeling them only from within. Some people do this with surprising accuracy. Others can barely sense their heart at all. This ability, the capacity to read the body's inner signals, turns out to matter in ways that reach far beyond the heart itself. In studies using that card game where players must learn to favor the safe decks, those who could sense their own heartbeats most clearly tended to learn the good choices faster and play more advantageously. The reasoning runs like this. If intuition is partly built from bodily signals, then people who hear those signals more clearly have a better channel to their own gut, a cleaner line to the wordless verdict forming inside them. The connection is still being explored, and researchers are careful not to overstate it, but it points to something quietly profound. Reading your intuition may be in part a matter of how well you can feel your own body. The gut feeling is a signal, and like any signal, it reaches some people more clearly than others. Consider the feeling of being sure, that solid, settled sense that you simply know something, that it could not be otherwise. We treat this feeling as proof, as if certainty were the mind's report that a belief has been verified. It is not. Certainty is itself a sensation, a particular feeling the brain produces, and like any feeling, it can arrive whether or not the underlying belief is true. People recovering from certain kinds of seizures have described a flood of total conviction, attached to nothing at all, a pure sense of knowing, with no object. And all of us have felt absolutely certain of a memory that later proved false, the feeling of truth fully intact while the truth itself was gone. This is a quietly unsettling thing to sit with. The conviction that accompanies a gut feeling that sense of this is right is not evidence that it is right. It is a separate experience the brain layers on top, and it can attach to a sound intuition and a mistaken one alike. Knowing this does not make certainty useless. It makes it something to notice rather than simply obey, a feeling to weigh rather than a verdict to trust. Notice how often a gut feeling reaches you first as something felt rather than thought. Before any sentence forms, there is a tightening in the chest, a small drop in the stomach, an easing of the shoulders, a faint pull toward one door rather than another. The body speaks before the mind finds words, and frequently the words never come at all, leaving only the physical impression and a vague sense of which way it points. This is the native language of intuition. It does not arrive as a clear proposition to be examined. It arrives as a change in the body, a shift in sensation that you then have to interpret, translating the feeling into a guess about what it means. Some people are fluent in this language and trust it easily. Others feel the same signals but struggle to read them, dismissing the tightening or the lightness as random noise. Think of the last time a decision felt wrong in your body before you could say why. That wordless physical report was intuition in its rawest form, reaching you through the only channel it has, the body itself, long before thought could catch up and give the feeling a name. There is an old piece of advice: to sleep on a hard decision, and it turns out to rest on something real. While you sleep, your brain does not simply rest. It works, replaying the day's experiences, sorting them, strengthening some connections and loosening others, quietly weaving the scattered moments of waking life into deeper patterns. Researchers have found that people often solve problems better after sleep, and sometimes wake with a sense of clarity or a hunch that was not there the night before. Much of this happens below memory. You do not recall the sorting, and you may not recall the specific experiences that fed it, yet you wake with the patterns subtly more available, ready to surface as a feeling when a related moment arrives. This is part of how intuition is built, not only in the living of experience, but in the nightly processing of it, the brain distilling raw days into usable instinct while you lie unaware. The hunch that greets you in the morning is not magic delivered in the dark. It is the residue of your own mind's patient overnight labor handing you, on waking, a little more of what it quietly understood. Think of where your best ideas tend to find you. Rarely at the desk straining. More often in the shower, on a walk, in the loose, unfocused moments when you have stopped trying. There is a reason the answer so often comes when you are no longer reaching for it. When the mind is locked onto a problem, it tends to follow the same well-worn paths, circling the obvious approaches with a kind of narrow intensity. When you relax and let attention wander, that grip loosens, and the mind begins to roam more freely, brushing against distant and unexpected connections it would never reach while focused. Insight tends to arrive in exactly these moments, a sudden, quiet click as two far-apart ideas finally touch. Researchers studying the brain at rest have found it anything but idle, lighting up with activity as it drifts, and associates doing some of its most creative work precisely when you are not directing it. This is why stepping away from a problem is not giving up, but a different kind of working. The gut sometimes needs you to stop pushing to grow quiet, before it can hand you the thing you were looking for all along. Much of what you know you could never put into words. You recognize a friend's footsteps in the hall sense when a familiar engine sounds wrong, feel that a sentence is grammatical without being able to state the rule. This is knowledge that lives below language, real and reliable, yet sealed off from explanation. The brain is constantly detecting patterns it cannot describe, absorbing regularities through sheer exposure, and storing them in a form that has no words attached. You feel the pattern. You cannot say it. Intuition draws deeply from this wordless reservoir, which is part of why a gut feeling so often resists being justified. Asked why you sense something, you reach for reasons and find none that fit. Because the knowing was never built from reasons in the first place. It was built from countless instances, quietly registered beneath awareness. This gap between knowing and saying is not a failure of intelligence. It is a feature of how much the mind takes in far more than it can ever translate. Some of your truest knowledge will always arrive mute, as a feeling rather than a sentence, carrying a certainty it cannot explain because the explanation was never there to begin with. Bring someone into a laboratory and show them long strings of letters telling them only to study each one, never explaining that the strings follow a hidden and rather intricate set of rules. Later show them new strings and ask which ones feel right. They will sort them correctly far more often than chance, choosing the ones that obey the pattern, all while insisting they have no idea what the pattern is. They simply feel that some look right and others wrong. This is implicit learning, and it reveals something quietly remarkable about the mind. Through exposure alone, without instruction or even awareness, people absorb complex structure and come to sense conformity to it as a feeling rather than a rule. It is how children master the grammar of their language, long before anyone teaches them a single rule of it, soaking up the pattern from the speech around them. Intuition often works in exactly this way. The slow uptake of a structure, too complex to state, surfacing later as a sense of what fits. You do not always need to understand a pattern to be guided by it. Sometimes living among it long enough is all the learning the gut requires. Long before a child can speak or even crawl, something in them already understands how the world is supposed to behave. Researchers learn to read this by watching where babies look, knowing that infants gaze longer at things that surprise them. Show a baby a ball rolling behind a screen, then lift the screen to reveal the ball has vanished or passed impossibly through a solid wall, and the baby stares, held by the wrongness of it. Tiny children, only months old, expect objects to stay solid, to fall when unsupported, to continue existing when hidden from view. Nobody taught them these things. They have not lived long enough to learn them through trial. Yet the expectations are, they're an early scaffolding of intuition about the physical world present, almost from the start. This suggests that not all instinct is built from accumulated experience. Some of it seems to arrive as part of the equipment, a set of basic assumptions about reality that the mind comes ready to make. Beneath the intuitions you have earned through living lie older ones you never had to learn, waiting in the infant before the world has had a chance to teach a single lesson. Beyond the sense that objects are solid lies a deeper layer of intuition woven into the mind before culture or schooling touches it. Infants can tell the difference between a small number of objects and a larger one, sensing more and fewer long before they can count or name a single digit. They show early signs of reading other people as minds, beings with attention and intention, rather than mere moving shapes. They navigate space, tracking where things are and where they have gone. These foundational intuitions about quantity, about space, about the inner lives of others appear so early and so reliably that researchers increasingly see them as part of the brain's native architecture instincts the human mind is built to have. They are the bedrock on which later learned intuitions rest. When you sense at a glance that one crowd is bigger than another, or read a flicker of intention in a stranger's eyes, you are drawing on capacities older than your own memory, older than language, present in some form from the very beginning. Not everything the gut knows was gathered along the way. Some of it was there before you arrived to begin gathering anything at all. A sleeping parent can stay undisturbed through noise of every kind, traffic voices a storm against the window, and then wake instantly at the smallest cry from their child in the next room. Something in them is listening, even in sleep, tuned with extraordinary precision to one particular signal. This is intuition shaped by deep evolutionary need. The bond between caregiver and infant rests on a swift, wordless reading of the child's state, the ability to sense distress, hunger, or danger fast enough to answer it. Brain imaging has shown that an infant's cry activates response in a parent with striking speed, engaging circuits that prepare care almost before conscious thought begins. The reading happens beneath deliberation, a feeling of alarm or tenderness rising on its own. Across the long history of our species, the parents whose intuition for a child's needs was quickest and surest were the ones whose children were most likely to survive, and that pressure left its mark in the brain. The gut feeling a parent has for their child, the sense that something is wrong without a sound to prove it, is one of the oldest and most finely tuned forms of intuition the human mind possesses. Travel to the far side of the world to a people whose language you do not share, and whose customs are unfamiliar, and one thing will still be legible to you at a glance: a face. The wide eyes of fear, the curl of disgust, the open lift of joy, the downturn of sorrow. Researchers who studied emotion across vastly different cultures, including communities with little contact with the outside world, found that certain expressions are recognized everywhere, read the same way by people who could share almost nothing else. This points to something instinctive, a shared grammar of emotion written into the human face, and into our ability to read it present across the whole species, rather than taught by any single culture. You do not learn from scratch what a frightened face means. Some part of you arrives already fluent. This is why your intuition about other people's feelings can leap across barriers of language and background, catching the meaning in a stranger's expression before a word is exchanged. Beneath all the variety of human cultures runs this common thread, an inherited fluency in the face, one of the deepest and most universal forms of instinct we carry. Before you have consciously decided anything about a stranger, you have already judged them. Researchers have measured how long it takes for an impression of a face to form, flashing images for the briefest moments, and asking people for their gut read on whether the person seemed trustworthy. It happens almost impossibly fast, within a fraction of a second, a tenth of the time it takes to blink. And giving people more time to look barely changes the verdict. The impression formed in that first instant is largely the one that stays. Something in the brain is built to size up a face the moment it appears, reading it for friend or threat, safety or danger, faster than awareness can follow. This is the ancient social radar at work, evolved in a world where reading another person quickly could matter a great deal. The unsettling part is how readily we act on these instant reads, trusting or doubting a person on the strength of a judgment made before we consciously saw them at all. The feeling is immediate and it is powerful. Whether it is accurate is a separate question. One that first impression, formed in a tenth of a second, can never answer on its own. Show the same face to 100 different people and ask whether the person looks trustworthy, and a strange thing happens. They tend to agree. Strangers who have never met, drawing on nothing but a photograph, converge on similar judgments about who seems honest and who seems not. There is a shared, almost automatic reading of faces, a common set of cues the human mind responds to in much the same way. The trouble is that this widespread agreement is not the same as accuracy. The features that make a face read as trustworthy, a certain softness, a hint of a natural smile, a particular set of the brows, have little real connection to whether the person can actually be trusted. We agree with one another, and we are often wrong together. An honest person with an unlucky face may be doubted by everyone, while a charming look may open doors it should not. This is a humbling thing to know about your own snap judgments of character. The conviction they carry, and the fact that others would share it, can feel like evidence. It is not. It is a shared instinct, powerful, and consistent, and entirely capable of being mistaken in unison. Of all the things the human mind learned to read, none mattered more than each other. Our ancestors survived, not through strength or speed, but through living together in groups where cooperation meant life, and a misjudged ally could mean death. In that world, the ability to read other people quickly, to sense who was trustworthy, who was angry, who was drifting away, was as vital as any physical skill. And so the brain devoted enormous capacity to this reading, building a kind of social radar that runs constantly beneath awareness, taking in faces, voices, postures, the subtle currents of feeling between people. Your gut feelings about others rise from this deep machinery. When someone strikes you as warm before they have done anything, when a group's mood reaches you the moment you enter the room, when you sense a shift in a friend, without a word being said, you are drawing on an instinct shaped across countless generations of social life. This is perhaps the richest domain of human intuition, because it is the one our survival leaned on most heavily. We are beneath everything, creatures built to read one another. And much of the gut's quiet work is exactly this. Most people are surprisingly poor at catching a lie. Ask someone directly whether another person is being honest, and their accuracy hovers near a coin flip, no better than chance, despite all their confidence. This is one of the well-established and slightly deflating findings about human judgment. But there is a stranger layer beneath it. In some studies, when researchers measured people's quicker, more automatic responses rather than their stated verdicts, a faint signal appeared. The indirect intuitive read seemed to register deception a little better than the conscious guess did, as if some part of the mind detected the lie, even as the deliberate judgment missed it. The effect is small, and researchers remain cautious about how far to trust it. But it hints at a quiet possibility that the gut may sometimes catch what conscious reasoning talks itself out of, picking up faint cues of dishonesty that never reach the level of a clear thought. When you override a vague sense that someone is not being straight with you, reasoning yourself back into trust, you may occasionally be silencing the more accurate voice. The fast mind, in this one domain, sometimes sees a little more than the slow one admits. There is a moment listening to someone when your body knows something your mind has not yet accepted. A faint tightening, a flicker of unease, a sense that the words and the person do not quite align, arriving while you are still consciously choosing to believe them. Research into deception suggests this gap is real. The body can react to the subtle signs of a lie, the micro-tensions, the small mismatches between expression and speech, before the conscious mind has reached any verdict at all. The signals are picked up below awareness and surface as a physical feeling, rather than a clear judgment. And often we talk ourselves past this feeling, reasoning that we have no good cause to doubt, smoothing the discomfort away in favor of trust. Yet the discomfort was a report. Some watchful part of you noticed the seam in the story and sounded a quiet alarm well ahead of any conclusion. This does not mean every flicker of unease marks a lie. The body raises false alarms too, but it does mean that the feeling came first, formed from cues. Your conscious mind never registered a verdict reached in the body before the mind sat down to decide. Return for a moment to the belly, where so many feelings seem to gather. Lining the walls of your digestive tract is a nervous system so extensive and so capable that scientists have given it a name of its own, the second brain. It contains hundreds of millions of nerve cells, a population rivaling that of a small animal's entire brain, woven through the gut in an intricate web. What makes it remarkable is its independence. This system can manage the complex work of digestion on its own, coordinating muscle and secretion and rhythm, without waiting for instructions from the brain above. Sever its connection to the head, and the gut continues its labor, governed by its own local intelligence. For most of human history, we imagined thought and feeling as residing solely in the skull. The truth is more distributed. A great deal of processing happens in the body itself, in this dense neural network humming quietly below conscious notice. When a feeling settles in your stomach, it is not arriving in a mindless place. It is arriving in a region that does its own kind of knowing. A second brain that has been there all along, working in the dark beneath every meal and every quiet flutter of unease. Serotonin is a name most people associate with mood, with feelings of calm and well-being, with the chemistry of the mind. So it comes as a surprise to learn where most of it is actually made, not in the brain, but in the gut. The clear majority of the body's serotonin is produced down in the digestive tract, manufactured by the very lining of the system that handles food. For a chemical so bound up with how we feel, this is a quietly startling fact, a reminder of how deeply mind and body are entangled. The serotonin in the gut serves its own local purposes there, helping to govern the movements of digestion. But the entanglement of this chemistry with mood, and the constant signaling between gut and brain, points to a body far more unified than our habit of separating thought from flesh would suggest. When people speak of a feeling in their gut, they are naming a place that is genuinely steeped in the chemistry of emotion. The old separation of a thinking head and an unthinking body grows harder to maintain the closer you look. Mood, it turns out, has roots that reach down far below the neck. You are not entirely yourself, at least not alone. Inside your intestines live trillions of microbes, a teeming community of bacteria so vast it rivals the number of your own cells. For a long time we thought of them only as passengers helping to break down food. They are far more involved than that. These microbes produce chemicals that influence the brain, communicating along the same gut-to-brain pathways that carry your other inner signals. And a growing body of research suggests they can affect mood, stress, and perhaps even aspects of behavior. Studies in animals have shown that changing the gut's bacterial population can change how anxious or bold an animal becomes. The findings in humans are newer and more tentative, and researchers are careful not to claim too much too soon. But the picture taking shape is a strange and humbling one. Some part of what you feel, some shading of your mood and your choices, may be influenced by the living community in your gut organisms, with chemistry of their own. The gut feeling may have quite literally contributors you never imagined, whispering into your inner state from a world inside you that is not exactly you. When anxiety grips you, it often announces itself in the stomach first, a clench, a churn, a hollow, unsettled feeling, low in the body. We usually assume the mind became anxious, and the body followed the worry, flowing downward from thought into flesh. But the traffic can run the other way. The gut can generate its own distress signal, a real physical disturbance, and send it upward along the nerve pathways to the brain, where it is read as unease and woven into a feeling of anxiety. The body's report becomes the mind's mood. This is part of why anxiety can seem to come from nowhere, arriving as a bodily dread before any worrying thought has formed the feeling preceding the reason. It also helps explain why the state of the gut and the state of the mind are so closely linked, each able to disturb the other. A gut feeling of dread is not always the echo of a fearful thought. Sometimes it is the original signal rising from the body itself, and the fearful thoughts are what the mind assembles afterward to explain a discomfort that began far below it. The feeling, once again, comes first. You are not the same judge in the morning that you are by late afternoon, and not because the world has changed. The body's passing states, hunger, tiredness, the slow drain of a long day, reach quietly into the mind and reshape how things feel. When you are hungry, risks can loom differently, and patience grows thin. When you are tired, the effortful work of careful thought becomes harder to summon, and the fast intuitive system takes more of the wheel by default. These shifts happen below notice. You do not feel your judgment changing. You simply feel that a decision seems harder or easier, a person more or less agreeable, an option more or less appealing. never suspecting that an empty stomach or a depleted afternoon is coloring the verdict. This is one of the quietly unsettling truths about intuition. It is not a fixed instrument reading the world cleanly. It is a living process, running on a living body, and it bends with that body's condition through the hours. The same situation met when you are rested and fed can produce a different gut feeling than it would when you are worn down. Sometimes the wisest response to a strong feeling is simply to ask when and in what state it arrived. Consider a courtroom where decisions of real weight are made, and where we would hope judgment runs on the merits of each case alone. A study of parole rulings revealed a pattern that troubles that hope. Early in a session, judges granted favorable decisions at a fairly high rate. As the session wore on and the hours accumulated, the rate of favorable rulings declined, drifting toward denial as fatigue and depletion set in. Then came a break, a chance to rest and eat, and afterward the rate of favorable rulings rose again as if reset. The interpretation has been debated, and researchers caution that other factors may contribute. But the broad finding is sobering. Even in a setting built for careful deliberation, the body's passing state appears to leave its mark on the verdict. The same kind of case, meeting a different fate depending on the hour and what the judge had recently eaten. This is intuition's hidden influence in a place we least expect it. The decisions we believe most reasoned are not sealed off from the body. They too drift with hunger and tiredness, shaped at least a little by forces that have nothing to do with the case at hand. By now, a pattern is becoming clear, and it is worth pausing on. Your intuition is not a steady instrument, calibrated once and reading true forever after. It is a living thing, shifting from hour to hour, bending with your mood, your hunger, your tiredness, the particular weather of the moment you find yourself in. The same situation can produce one gut feeling when you are rested and at ease, and quite another when you are anxious, depleted, or wound-tight. This is not a flaw to be ashamed of. It is simply the nature of a faculty built into a body and a mind that are themselves always in motion. But knowing it changes how you might listen. A strong feeling is not automatically a true one, and part of reading your intuition well is reading the conditions it arose in. Was this dread the situation speaking, or the late hour? Was this confidence earned, or merely the buoyancy of a good mood? The gut deserves attention, but not blind obedience. Have you ever made a decision in one state, then wondered at it in another? That gap between the two is the fluctuation itself, the quiet reminder that the feeling and the moment are never entirely separate things. Stress and intuition have a complicated relationship, and it turns the same way a curve does, rising and then falling. A measure of pressure can sharpen the gut, focusing attention, quickening the read, lending a kind of heightened clarity to instinct in the moment that matters. This is the useful edge of stress, the alertness that helps a person rise to a demanding situation. But push beyond a certain point, and the effect reverses. Too much stress floods the system, overwhelming the fine signals that intuition depends on, drowning the quiet inner voice in a roar of alarm. Under extreme pressure, judgment narrows too far the mind, grasping at the obvious and missing the subtle. The gut feeling no longer a clear read, but a panicked one. So stress is neither friend nor enemy to intuition in any simple way. In moderate amounts it serves, and in excess it sabotages. And the same person can experience both within a single difficult hour. This is part of why composure matters so much in high-stakes moments, why trained people work so hard to stay calm under pressure. They are protecting the conditions in which their intuition can still speak clearly, keeping the stress on the rising side of the curve before it tips into noise. In the moments when everything happens at once, there is no time to think in the ordinary sense. A pilot facing sudden failure, a surgeon meeting a crisis at the table, a driver in the instant before a collision. Deliberate reasoning, the slow, careful weighing of options, is simply too slow for a situation measured in seconds. And so the trained mind does something else. It falls back on instinct, on the deep, fast intuition built through years of practice, letting the body and the rehearsed response take over, while conscious deliberation steps aside. This is precisely why such people train so relentlessly, repeating procedures until the right action lives below thought, ready to fire without being summoned. In the crisis, they are not reasoning their way to safety. They are recognizing the situation and responding from a place faster than reason, the gut feeling honed into reliable instinct through endless preparation. The calm that skilled professionals show in emergencies is not the absence of fear. It is the presence of trained intuition doing in an instant what deliberate thought could never do in time, when the moment is too fast for thinking. The well-prepared gut is what remains, and for those who have built it carefully, it is enough. There is a particular state known to athletes and musicians, and anyone deeply absorbed in a skill where action becomes effortless. The self seems to quiet, the sense of time loosens, and the right move simply happens, one flowing into the next, without strain or hesitation. People call it flow, and it is one of the most cherished experiences a practiced skill can offer. What is happening beneath the experience is intuition running freely. The deep, fast competence built through long practice is allowed to operate without interference, unburdened by the second-guessing and conscious monitoring that usually accompany effort. In flow, the deliberate, doubting mind grows quiet, and the trained gut takes over completely, performing at the height of its ability precisely because nothing is getting in its way. This is the gift hidden inside mastery, the moment when all the accumulated practice finally moves on its own. It cannot be forced, only allowed, arriving most readily when the challenge meets the skill and the doubting mind consents to fall silent. Flow is what intuition feels like when it is finally trusted entirely, when knowing and doing become a single seamless motion, and the person for a while simply gets out of their own way and lets the deeper part move. There is a strange way to ruin something you do well. Simply pay close attention to it. A pianist who has played a passage 1,000 times begins to think about each finger, and the music stumbles. A skilled typist, asked to name the position of each key, suddenly fumbles for letters her hands have always found on their own. The phenomenon has a name, and it appears across nearly every practiced skill. When emotion has been rehearsed deeply enough to live below conscious thought, turning conscious attention back onto it interrupts the smoother, faster system that had been running it perfectly well. The deliberate mind trying to help gets in the way. It moves too slowly and too clumsily for work that the trained gut had been handling with ease. This is why experts often perform worse the moment they start to monitor themselves, and why advice to just stop thinking, frustrating as it sounds, is sometimes exactly right. The intuitive system is not improved by supervision, it is disrupted by it. Once a skill has sunk deep enough to become instinct, the kindest thing the conscious mind can do is step back, grow quiet, and let the practiced part do what it already knows how to do. Watch what happens to a golfer in a slump or a free throw shooter who has suddenly gone cold. Often the trouble is not in the body, but in the mind's attempt to manage it. Researchers studying performance under pressure have found that when skilled athletes begin to consciously analyze emotion, they have performed countless times, breaking it into parts and attending to each one. Their performance frequently suffers. The well-grooved action, which flowed when left alone, grows stiff and uncertain under the weight of supervision. This is sometimes what choking under pressure actually is, not a failure of nerve, so much as an excess of attention, the anxious mind turning its gaze onto a skill that worked best unwatched. The pressure makes the athlete try to control what should have been left automatic, and the controlling is what breaks it. The cruel irony is that caring more and trying harder to manage the motion is precisely what undoes it. Think of a moment when you performed something familiar worse the more carefully you tried to do it right. That is the same mechanism. The deliberate mind crowding out the instinctive one. Proof that some things are done best when you trust the gut and stop instructing the hands. You know the feeling well. A name hovers just out of reach, a word you are certain you know, sitting maddeningly close, yet refusing to come. You can almost feel its shape, sense its first letter, know how many syllables it holds, and still it will not surface. This common and faintly maddening experience is more interesting than it seems. In that moment, some part of your mind clearly knows the name is there. It is signaling the presence of the knowledge, its rough contours, its availability, all while the word itself stays hidden. You are receiving an intuition about your own memory, a feeling that says the answer exists and is retrievable before the answer has actually arrived. And remarkably, this feeling is usually right. When people sense a word is on the tip of the tongue, they very often do recall it soon after, or recognize it instantly when shown. The gut feeling about your own mind proves accurate. This is intuition turned inward, a knowing about knowing, your awareness, sensing the shape of information it cannot yet reach. Even your relationship with your own memory, it turns out, is guided by feelings that run ahead of the facts they point toward. There is a quiet form of self-knowledge most of us use without ever noticing it. Asked a question, you often know almost instantly whether the answer is somewhere in you even before you have found it. You sense in a flash this "I know" or this "I will never recall," and the sense arrives ahead of the actual retrieval. Researchers have studied this, asking people to predict whether they will be able to remember something, and have found these predictions surprisingly accurate. Before the memory surfaces, some part of the mind has already assessed whether it can be found, and reports the verdict as a feeling. This is intuition reading the contents of your own mind, a fast internal scan, returning a sense of presence or absence before any conscious search is done. It is what lets you answer a quiz with quick confidence on some questions, and an immediate shrug on others. The gut, knowing the state of your knowledge before the knowledge itself appears. We tend to think of intuition as pointed outward at the world and other people, but it also turns inward, quietly monitoring your own memory, telling you what you hold before you have reached in to find it. Sometimes a face, a place, or a tune carries a faint glow of familiarity that you cannot place. You are sure you have encountered it before, though you cannot say where or when, and the feeling persists even as the memory refuses to come. This quiet sensation can arise from a single past exposure you have entirely forgotten. The conscious memory of the encounter is gone, yet it left a trace. A residue that surfaces now as a vague sense of recognition without any recollection attached. More striking still, this nameless familiarity can shape what you like and trust. Things that feel familiar tend to feel safer, more pleasant, easier to prefer, even when you have no idea why they seem familiar at all. So a forgotten exposure can quietly tilt a later choice, lending warmth to a stranger you once passed unknowingly, or appeal to a melody you heard once and never consciously remembered. The feeling of familiarity, it turns out, is not the same as the memory of an encounter. It can outlive the memory, entirely lingering as a pure sensation that still steers you. Some of your preferences are echoes of moments you no longer recall, reaching you only as a soft and reasonless sense that you have been here before. Here is a gentle and slightly humbling truth about preference. We tend to like things more the more often we encounter them, even when we never notice the encounters at all. Researchers have shown this again and again. Flash an image, a shape, a face, or a word repeatedly, even too quickly to be consciously seen, and people will later report liking it more than ones they have not been exposed to, without any idea why. Familiarity on its own breeds warmth. The mind seems to read what it has met before as safer, easier, more comfortable, and translates that ease into a feeling of liking. This quiet pull operates beneath awareness, shaping our preferences for music, for faces, for products, for ideas, often through nothing more than sheer, repeated exposure. It is part of why a song grows on us, why a once strange face becomes dear, why what surrounds us comes to feel like what we prefer. The gut feeling of liking something, then, is not always a judgment of its merit. Sometimes it is simply the residue of familiarity, the mind mistaking what it has seen, often for what it genuinely favors, a preference shaped by exposure we never even knew we had. Beauty announces itself fast. You glance at a face, a landscape, a building, and the sense of whether it pleases you arrives almost at once, well before you could explain a single reason for the verdict. Researchers studying aesthetic response have found just how quick this is. The impression of beauty forming in a fraction of a second, an immediate yes or no delivered by the gut. What is more, these instant judgments tend to hold, give people far more time to study the same image, and their considered opinion usually matches the snap one they formed in an instant. The first impression of beauty largely stands. This suggests that aesthetic response is not chiefly a matter of slow reflection, but of fast intuitive reaction, a feeling the mind generates almost reflexively in the presence of certain forms and faces and scenes. We like to think of taste as something cultivated and deliberate, and in part it is, but beneath the reasoning lies this immediate gut response, quick and stable, deciding what pleases us before we have had a chance to think about why. The experience of beauty, so often felt as a deep and considered thing, begins as one of the fastest judgments the mind makes. Stand before a wide view, an open landscape, a quiet room, a stranger's face, and something in you has already responded before you are aware of looking. Researchers measuring the brain's reaction to images have found signs of an aesthetic verdict forming with astonishing speed, the mind registering pleasing or displeasing within a sliver of a second, far too fast for any conscious thought to have taken place. The reflection you bring to it afterward, the reasons you give for why a thing is lovely or not, arrive later, often as explanations layered onto a feeling that was already there. This reorders our usual picture of how taste works. We imagine ourselves examining a scene and then concluding whether we find it beautiful. More often, the conclusion comes first, instantly and wordlessly, and the examination follows to justify what the gut has already decided. The feeling leads, and reason trails behind, dressing the verdict in reasons. This is intuition, operating in the realm of beauty, delivering its judgment before deliberation has even begun. Much of what you find pleasing, you found pleasing before you knew you were looking. The response complete in milliseconds, settled in the body long before the mind arrives to admire and explain. Creation is not the orderly march we sometimes imagine, reason leading step by careful step toward a finished work. It is guided more often by feeling. Artists and scientists alike describe being drawn towards certain directions by a sense they cannot yet justify, a pull that says, this way, this idea, this approach, before any proof or plan confirms it. A painter senses a composition is nearly right. A composer feels a phrase, wants to resolve a certain way. A researcher is tugged toward one question over 100 others by a hunch about where the interesting truth lies. This is intuition at work, in the act of making, narrowing an infinite field of possibility down to the few promising paths worth pursuing. Without it, creators would drown in options, every choice as good as every other, with no feeling to point the way. The gut does the early sorting, sensing which directions hold promise before reason can demonstrate it, letting the mind commit its limited energy to paths that feel alive. Much of creative work is exactly this, following a feeling towards something not yet visible, trusting an intuition about where the good thing lies, and only afterward discovering whether the gut was right to lead you there. We tell the story of science as a tale of evidence and proof, and rightly so, for that is how its claims are tested and made trustworthy. But that is the story of how a discovery is confirmed, not always how it is born. Again and again the great leaps began, as hunches, as intuitions, A researcher trusted long before any evidence could support them. A scientist senses that two unconnected things are linked, that a strange result points toward a hidden law, that a question worth years of labor lies down a particular path and follows the feeling before reason can vindicate it. The evidence comes later gathered to test and to prove what intuition first suggested. Many discoveries we now regard as triumphs of logic began as a quiet conviction, a sense that something was true held before it could be shown. This is why intuition and rigor are not opposites in science, but partners across time. The gut proposes leaping ahead to a possibility, and then the slow, careful work of evidence confirms or refutes it. The breakthroughs we credit to reason were often at their inception, acts of trust in a feeling that ran far ahead of any proof. Among the figures we most associate with pure reason, one of the greatest spoke openly of relying on something else. Albert Einstein described arriving at his deepest ideas not through step-by-step logic, but through a kind of feeling, an intuition that reached the answer first, with the formal proof following only afterward to demonstrate what he had already sensed to be true. He spoke of imagination and intuition as essential to his work of grasping a truth before he could justify it, of the leap that came before the calculation. The mathematics that made his theories rigorous was in his telling the later labor of confirming a vision the intuition had already glimpsed. This from a mind we hold up as the very emblem of rational genius. It is a quiet correction to how we imagine such achievements happen. The towering edifices of reason often begin with a feeling, a sense of how things must be trusted before any proof exists to support it. Even at the highest reaches of human thought, intuition leads and logic follows. The gut sensing the shape of the truth, while reason hurries behind to build the bridge that will let others cross to where the feeling had already arrived. There is a particular feeling that accompanies a good idea, a sense of rightness that arrives before you can say what makes it right. You feel the answer click into place, feel its correctness as a kind of inner settling, and only afterward work out the reasons that justify the feeling. This order, feeling first and justification second, runs through a great deal of human thinking, far more than we usually admit. We imagine that we reason our way to conclusions and then feel confident in them. Often it runs the other way. The sense of rightness comes first, a gut verdict that an idea is sound, and the logic follows to explain and defend what intuition has already chosen. This is not a flaw exactly. The feeling of rightness is itself a kind of rapid judgment, drawing on knowledge and pattern below awareness, a real signal worth attending to. But it is not proof, and the danger is in mistaking the one for the other, taking the strong feeling that an idea is right as evidence that it is. The wise course is to honor the feeling as a starting point, and then do the slower work, letting the sense of rightness propose, and letting reason decide whether the proposal holds. Mathematics is perhaps the most rigorous of all human pursuits, built entirely from proof, where nothing is accepted until it is demonstrated beyond any doubt. So it is striking how often mathematicians describe their actual experience of discovery in the language of feeling. Many report a sense of conviction that a statement is true, a certainty that a proof exists and will be found, arriving long before they have worked out a single line of the argument. The intuition comes first, a deep sense of the truth of the thing, and the formal proof is then constructed to confirm and communicate what the mathematician already felt to be so. They speak of seeing that a result must hold, of feeling its truth, and then laboring sometimes for years to build the rigorous chain that will make that feeling demonstrable to others. This is a remarkable thing that even in the most logical of disciplines, intuition runs ahead of proof, sensing the destination before the path to it is laid. The rigor is real and essential, the part that makes mathematics trustworthy. But the discovery, the first knowing, is often a gut feeling, a flash of certainty about truth. with all the careful proof arriving afterward to catch up with what the intuition saw. We have inherited a habit of pitting the gut against the head, intuition against analysis, as if we must choose a side, and one must be the wiser. The truth is more cooperative. They are not rivals but partners, and each is strong, precisely where the other is weak. Intuition is fast drawing on vast experience below awareness, able to read a situation in an instant, but it is prone to bias and confident even when wrong. Analysis is slow and effortful, but it can catch the errors. Intuition makes checking the fast verdict against careful reason, exposing the shortcut that led astray. Neither alone is enough. Intuition without analysis can race confidently into mistakes, and analysis without intuition can stall forever, unable to feel which option matters, lost in endless deliberation. The two work best in conversation: the gut, proposing a swift read, and reason, examining whether to trust it, each correcting the blind spots of the other. This is the quiet art of good judgment, not choosing between feeling and thought, but weaving them together, knowing when to lean on the fast, knowing, and when to slow down and check it. The mind was never meant to run on one alone, so how should you actually decide when a choice matters and the stakes are real? The evidence points toward a partnership rather than a winner. The strongest decisions tend to come not from trusting the gut blindly, nor from grinding everything through cold analysis, but from letting the two work together in sequence. The intuition speaks first, offering its fast read, the sense of which way to go drawn from all your accumulated experience. Then reason steps in, not to dismiss the feeling but to examine it, asking whether this is a domain where your gut has earned reliability, whether the feeling might be biased, whether the slower mind sees something the fast one missed. When intuition and reason agree, you can act with real confidence. When they conflict, that disagreement is itself valuable information, a sign to look closer before deciding. This is more demanding than simply following a feeling or a formula, but it is also wiser, drawing on the full range of what your mind can do. The gut is too valuable to ignore and too fallible to obey without question. The best decisions honor both listening to the feeling and then thinking it through, letting each have its proper say. The advice to trust your gut is everywhere offered as though it were universally wise. It is not universally wise. It is wise only under certain conditions, and knowing those conditions is what separates good use of intuition from foolish reliance on it. Your gut is trustworthy in the domains where you have genuine hard-won experience, where you have done the thing many times and learned, through clear feedback, what works and what does not. There, the fast feeling is the distilled product of all that practice, and it deserves real weight. But carry that same trust into a domain you have never truly mastered: a situation, rare or unfamiliar, a field where you lack real experience, and the gut feeling becomes far less reliable, just as confident but no longer earned. The feeling is the same in both cases, equally strong, equally sure. What differs is whether the experience behind it ever actually prepared you to read this kind of situation. So the question to ask of any gut feeling is not only how strong it is, but where it came from. Trust it most in the waters you know well. Hold it more loosely in waters you have never learned to navigate, where confidence and competence have quietly come apart. Picture facing a situation utterly new to you, one with no precedent in your experience, and feeling all the same a strong gut sense of what to do. That feeling deserves suspicion, precisely because it feels exactly as certain as the trustworthy kind. Intuition is built from past experience, from patterns absorbed across many encounters. When a situation is genuinely rare or unfamiliar, there is no rich store of past instances for the gut to draw on, and yet it will often produce a confident feeling anyway, manufactured from loose resemblances and surface cues, rather than real, relevant experience. This is the trap of intuition in the unfamiliar. The feeling does not weaken or announce its own unreliability. It arrives with full conviction, indistinguishable from the gut sense of a true expert, even though the foundation beneath it is thin or absent. This is why important decisions in unfamiliar territory call for extra caution, for slowing down gathering information, leaning harder on careful reasoning rather than on a feeling that has not been earned. The gut serves you beautifully in the known. In the genuinely new, it can mislead you with complete confidence, and recognizing when you have left familiar ground is itself one of the most useful skills in knowing when to trust the feeling at all. There is a darker side to the fast pattern-matching mind, and honesty requires facing it directly. The same machinery that lets intuition read a situation instantly can also be hijacked by stereotypes, by crude associations absorbed from a culture surfacing as a gut feeling that masquerades as insight. The mind built to find patterns quickly will latch onto surface features, a person's appearance, an accent, a group they seem to belong to, and produce a fast judgment that feels like intuition, but is really prejudice dressed in intuition's clothing. The feeling is just as immediate, just as confident, just as wordless as a genuine expert read. That is exactly what makes it dangerous. It does not feel like a stereotype from the inside. It feels like simply seeing, like knowing. And so people act on biased gut feelings while believing they are exercising sound instinct, the prejudice hidden inside the very speed and certainty that make intuition feel trustworthy. This is one of the strongest reasons not to grant the gut automatic authority over judgments about people. Some of what surfaces as a feeling about a stranger is not insight at all, but the residue of bias, and telling the two apart requires precisely the slow, deliberate examination that intuition by its nature invites us to skip. The fast mind is not a blank and impartial instrument. It is shaped by everything it has been exposed to, and it absorbs the patterns of its environment indiscriminately, the useful ones and the unjust ones alike. The very system that protects you, that reads danger in an instant and reads a room before a word is spoken, also quietly takes in the biases that surround it, encoding the prejudices of a culture into its lightning-fast responses without your consent or awareness. This is the uncomfortable consequence of how intuition is built. It learns from exposure, and if what it is exposed to is steeped in stereotype, then stereotype becomes part of its fast machinery, surfacing later as gut feelings that feel entirely natural and entirely your own. People who sincerely reject prejudice in their conscious values can still carry biased associations in their fast responses, absorbed from a world that taught them without asking. This does not make the person bad, but it does make the gut in this domain something to question rather than simply trust. The protective speed of intuition and its capacity to carry bias are not two separate things. They are the same fast system doing exactly what it does, learning the world as it is, given fairness and unfairness together. It might seem that questioning your gut would weaken it, that doubt is the enemy of instinct. The opposite is closer to the truth. Learning to question a gut feeling is itself a skill, and practiced well, it does not silence intuition, but refines it, teaching you to tell the trustworthy feelings from the misleading ones. The goal is never to stop feeling, nor to override every instinct with laborious analysis. It is to develop a wiser relationship with the gut, one that listens to the feeling and then asks the right questions of it. Where did this come from? Is this a domain I truly know? Might this be bias rather than insight? Am I tired or stressed, or carrying a mood that is coloring the verdict? These questions do not reject intuition. They interrogate it, separating the signal from the noise, so that over time you come to trust your gut more accurately, leaning on it where it has earned trust, and holding back where it has not. This is the mark of a mature relationship with your own mind, neither dismissing the fast knowing nor obeying it blindly, but learning its strengths and its failures so well that the questioning itself becomes a kind of deeper, more reliable intuition. There is a small, and quietly powerful act available to you in any difficult moment, and it costs nothing but attention. When a strong feeling rises, anger, dread, a churn of anxiety, simply naming it, putting the feeling into words can begin to loosen its hold on you. Researchers studying emotion have found that the act of labeling a feeling appears to change how the brain processes it, engaging the more deliberate reflective regions and quieting the raw intensity of the emotional response. The feeling does not vanish, but it softens, becomes something you are observing rather than something that is sweeping you along a signal you can read instead of a current that simply carries you. This matters deeply for living well with your intuition. A gut feeling is most useful when you can attend to it without being ruled by it, when you can notice the dread or the pull or the unease and ask what it might be telling you rather than simply reacting. Naming creates exactly this small space, a gap between the feeling and the response in which judgment becomes possible. Think of a time a wave of feeling caught you, and how differently it might have gone had you paused to name it. The gut speaks in feelings, and learning to name those feelings is learning to listen to them clearly, hearing the message without drowning in the emotion that delivers it. To name a feeling is in a sense to befriend it, turning a force that moves you into a voice you can finally understand. Stress rarely announces itself first as a thought. It arrives in the body quietly ahead of any conscious admission that something is wrong. The shoulders draw up toward the ears, the jaw tightens, the breath grows shallow, the stomach unsettled, the hands restless, all while the conscious mind insists it is fine, carrying on as though nothing has changed. The body has registered the strain and begun to brace against it long before you consciously acknowledge being under pressure at all. Often you only notice much later when you finally feel the ache in your neck or realize how tightly you have been clenching, and trace it backward to understand that you were stressed all along without knowing it. This is the body keeping its own honest record, holding a truth the mind has not yet let itself see. It is also a channel of intuition you can learn to read. Those who become attuned to their bodily signals catch their own stress earlier, noticing the tension as it gathers, rather than after it has accumulated for hours. The body is forever reporting your true state, often more honestly than the conscious mind, which is skilled at insisting all is well. Have you ever discovered you were tense only after the fact, the body having known long before you admitted it? That gap between the body's knowing and the mind's admitting is intuition waiting quietly to be noticed, telling you the truth you had not yet let yourself hear. You step through a doorway, and before anyone has spoken before, you could point to a single reason you feel it. The air is heavy with tension, or warm with ease, or charged with something just concluded that you missed. The mood reaches you instantly, a felt atmosphere you sense the moment you enter, well ahead of any conscious analysis of what is happening in the room. This is intuition, reading a social space with remarkable speed, gathering 100 subtle cues at once. The set of people's faces, the angle of their bodies, the quality of the silence, the small tensions in how they hold themselves, distilling them into a single, immediate impression of how things stand. You do not consciously notice each cue. You notice the result, the feeling, the sense of the room's emotional weather arriving whole and at once. This is the ancient social radar. At its most fluent, evolved across countless generations of group living, when reading the mood of those around you quickly could mean safety or danger, belonging or exile. It runs constantly beneath awareness, and it is often strikingly accurate, catching the truth of a room before anyone has explained it. The next time you cross a threshold and feel the atmosphere settle over you before a word is exchanged, notice it. That is one of your oldest and most capable instincts, reading the people around you faster than thought, telling you where you stand before you have consciously looked. What exactly are you reading when you feel the mood of a room? The honest answer is that much of it lies below the reach of naming. The cues are real, but they are subtle, almost beyond description. a fractional tightness around someone's eyes, a barely held posture the way two people are not quite looking at each other, a warmth or coolness in the tone of the air that no single feature fully explains. Your social mind gathers these scattered fragments and combines them into a felt verdict, tension or warmth, ease or unease, without ever presenting you the individual pieces it used to reach it. This is why the feeling can be so strong and so hard to justify at the same time. Asked how you know the room is tense. You reach for words and find only the feeling itself, the underlying cues, having never risen into conscious awareness to begin with. They were processed in the dark and delivered as an impression. This wordless reading is one of intuition's quiet marvels, the mind extracting genuine information from signals too faint and too many for conscious thought to track. It is also why social intuition can feel almost like a sixth sense, a knowing without an obvious source. There is no mystery in it, only a great deal of fast processing happening below notice, but the experience of it, sensing what you cannot explain, is one of the most common and most striking ways the gut speaks. In the middle of a conversation, something turns, a subtle shift, a cooling, a sudden tension, a moment where the warmth quietly drains out of the exchange, and you feel it before either of you has said a single word to mark the change. The feeling arrives first, a sense that the ground has moved, that something is different now, ahead of any spoken acknowledgement that anything has happened at all. This is intuition, tracking the fine grain of human interaction in real time, picking up the tiny signals that conversations are made of beneath the words, a flicker across the other person's face, a small change in their voice, a shift in how they hold themselves, a beat of hesitation where there was none before. Your social mind reads these the instant they occur and registers the change, as a feeling often well before the other person has consciously decided to say anything, sometimes before they themselves have fully registered the shift. This is part of what makes human connection so rich and so subtle, this constant wordless reading running beneath every conversation, each person sensing the other's state through channels far faster than speech. When you feel a conversation turn, before anything is said, you are not imagining it. You are reading the other person closely, intuitively catching the change in the moment it begins. Your gut tracking the living current of the exchange, while the words trail behind, still catching up to what the feeling already knows. Spend years beside another person and something quiet accumulates between you, a fluency in reading them that no one outside the relationship can fully see. Long partnered couples come to understand each other through the faintest of signals, a particular silence, a small shift in tone, a way of setting down a cup, cues so subtle and so specific to the two of them that an outsider would never notice, let alone interpret. One can sense the other's mood the moment they walk in, read displeasure or worry or quiet joy in signs too slight to name, know what the other is feeling before a word is spoken. This is intuition, built through long, close, repeated exposure. A private language of micro-signals, learned over years of attention. Each has become, in effect, an expert in the other, having gathered thousands of observations of how this one particular person looks and sounds, across every state and every mood. The reading happens instantly, and below awareness, the same fast pattern matching that makes any expertise feel like effortless knowing. Here turn toward a single beloved and deeply studied subject. It is one of the tender marvels of long companionship, this capacity to read another person so well that understanding seems to need no words. And it is intuition, at its most intimate, the gut feeling for another human being, refined across years of shared life, into something that can feel almost like reading their mind, when it is really just having learned them that completely. People who are very good at something often describe their skill in mysterious terms, a sixth sense, a feel for it, a knowing they cannot explain. The experienced doctor who senses a diagnosis, the seasoned detective who feels which detail matters, the master craftsman whose hands seem to know on their own. It can look almost like a supernatural gift, an instinct that comes from nowhere. But there is no magic in it. This sixth sense is simply intuition, trained so deeply through so many years of experience that it no longer feels like thinking at all. The knowledge has sunk below conscious awareness, becomes so thoroughly absorbed that it surfaces instantly as a feeling rather than a reasoned conclusion, and so the expert drawing on it cannot trace the steps and calls it instinct. What looks like a mysterious gift is the natural endpoint of deep expertise, the moment when hard-won knowledge becomes so automatic that it stops feeling like knowledge and starts feeling like sense. This is both humbling and encouraging. Humbling because it strips the mystique from expertise, revealing it as accumulated experience rather than innate magic. Encouraging because it means the sixth sense is in principle available to anyone willing to put in the years to gather the experience and the feedback that slowly turn effortful learning into effortless feeling. The mysterious knowing of the master is just intuition fully grown, no longer recognizable as the thinking it once was. Ask a true master how they do what they do, and you will rarely receive a clear chain of reasoning. Instead, they reach for the language of the body. The potter speaks of feeling when the clay is right, sensing it through the hands rather than judging it with the eyes. The surgeon describes a feel for the tissue, the sailor a sense of the wind in the body. The musician a knowing in the fingers that needs no conscious instruction. Their expertise has become embodied, lodged not in explicit rules they could recite, but in the body itself, surfacing as physical feeling rather than deliberate thought. This is intuition in its most developed form, knowledge so thoroughly absorbed that it has migrated out of the conscious, reasoning mind and into the trained body, where it operates faster and more reliably than any spoken rule could. It is why masters are often poor teachers of their own craft, able to do the thing flawlessly, yet unable to explain it, because the knowing simply is not held in words anymore. They feel their way to excellence, the hands knowing what the conscious mind could never articulate. This embodied intuition is the fruit of immense practice, the slow transfer of skill from effortful thought into the body's own wisdom. And it points to something profound about how deeply we can learn that knowledge can become so much a part of us that it lives in the hands, the verdict felt rather than thought, the mastery dwelling in the body itself. Watch a beginner and an expert face the same complex situation, and you see two entirely different experiences of the same moment. The beginner works through it laboriously, piece by piece, attending to each element in turn, consciously juggling the parts, the mind straining to hold it all. The expert takes it in whole, grasping the entire situation at a glance, the way a fluent reader sees a word, rather than assembling it, letter by letter. This is one of the deepest gifts intuition brings to expertise. Through long experience, the separate pieces of a situation become bundled into meaningful patterns, so that what overwhelms the novice as a dozen things to track becomes for the expert a single recognizable whole. The chess master sees a position, not 30 pieces. The experienced clinician sees a patient, not a list of symptoms to combine. The expert pilot reads the whole state of the aircraft at once, where the trainee must consciously check each instrument. This holistic grasp is what makes expertise feel effortless from the outside, the master perceiving directly what the beginner must construct with effort, the gut delivering the meaning of the whole situation instantly. It is also why experts can act so quickly under pressure, having no need to assemble the picture piece by piece when they already see it complete. The intuition of the expert is in large part this ability to perceive wholes, where the beginner sees only parts, the situation grasped entire in a single intuitive sweep. There is a price for the kind of intuition that can be trusted, and it is steep, paid not in money, but in time and effort. Studies of expertise across many fields, from chess to music to medicine, point repeatedly to a long road, often something on the order of 10 years of dedicated, focused practice before genuine mastery and reliable intuition take hold. And not just any practice will do. It must be the demanding kind, the kind that stretches you toward the edge of your ability and gives clear feedback on whether you got it right, so the mind can slowly calibrate, refining its patterns through thousands of corrected attempts. There are no shortcuts to this, no way to leap to the expert's effortless feel without traveling the long path of accumulating experience that builds it. The mysterious sixth sense of the master is not a gift bestowed, but a structure built slowly through years of effortful feedback-rich work. This is sobering and also clarifying. It means that reliable intuition in any serious domain is earned, not given the fruit of a long investment most people are unwilling to make. But it also means the path is real and open, that the effortless knowing of the expert was once for them as effortful as it is for any beginner, and that the gut in any domain worth mastering becomes trustworthy only after the long, patient work of teaching it has been done. We live in a time that prizes speed, and there is a longing to acquire skill quickly, to find the shortcut to mastery. But intuition resists this entirely. It cannot be rushed into being because of what it is made from, which is accumulated lived experience gathered one encounter at a time across years. There is no way to download the thousands of patterns that underlie an expert's instinct. No method to install the feel of a craft without living through the long apprenticeship that builds it. The gut becomes wise only by being slowly taught, encounter by encounter, each adding its small contribution to the deep store of patterns that intuition draws upon. This is why young talent, however gifted, lacks the intuitive depth of long experience, and why certain forms of wisdom seem to belong to those who have simply lived and practiced longer. The patterns take time to gather, and the time cannot be compressed. There is something quietly reassuring in this. In a world of instant, everything, intuition remains stubbornly earned, a faculty that rewards patience and persistence rather than cleverness or haste. It is built the slow way, or not at all accumulated, through the steady living of experience, which means that the deepening of your own intuition is something you can only grow into gradually over the long arc of doing a thing again and again until at last the feeling for it becomes your own. The gut keeps its own slow time, and there is no hurrying it. When a decision feels right, something in the brain responds, and the response is not merely metaphorical. Choices that align with your inner sense of things appear to engage the brain's reward circuitry, the same systems that register satisfaction and pleasure, lending a felt sense of rightness to a decision that fits. The brain seems to reward coherence, the matching of a choice to your deeper patterns and values, with a quiet glow of satisfaction that confirms you have chosen well. This is part of what the gut feeling of a good decision actually is, a kind of internal signal of fit, a sense of rightness generated and reinforced by the brain's own reward systems. And because reward shapes future behavior, this feeling does more than mark the moment. It quietly teaches you, strengthening the inclination to make similar choices again, building the patterns that future intuition will draw upon. The feeling of rightness, then, is both a verdict and a lesson, telling you that this choice fits, and nudging you toward such choices in the future. It is the brain's way of guiding you toward decisions that cohere with who you are and what you have learned. There is something to honor in this feeling, this sense that a choice sits right, drawn as it is from the brain's deep assessment of fit. But there is also reason for care, since a decision can feel right because it is familiar rather than because it is wise. The reward of coherence, sometimes confirming a choice that comfort, not truth, has made. There is a reason some decisions feel good in a way that has little to do with their actual outcomes. The brain appears to value coherence, the sense that things fit together, that a choice aligns with your existing beliefs, your self-image, your accumulated understanding of how the world works. When a decision coheres with this inner structure, it simply feels better, accompanied by a quiet satisfaction, a sense of rightness that arises from the fit itself, rather than from any guarantee that the choice is sound. This is a subtle and important thing to understand about your own gut feelings. The pleasant sense that a decision is right can come not from its wisdom but from its familiarity, from how smoothly it slots into what you already think and who you already believe yourself to be. The brain favors what coheres, and coherence feels like truth, even when it is only comfort. This is why we so often choose what confirms our existing views, what fits our sense of ourselves, mistaking the good feeling of coherence for the good feeling of correctness. The gut feeling of rightness is real, but it is reporting fit, not always fact. Knowing this offers a quiet caution worth carrying. When a decision feels deeply right, it is worth asking whether it feels right because it is wise or merely because it fits comfortably into the story you already tell about the world and yourself. The brain rewarding the coherence and leaving the harder question of truth for you to ask. The feelings that follow a choice are not idle. Regret and relief, that sinking sense of a wrong turn or the warm easing of a right one, are doing quiet work, teaching you, marking your decisions so that future intuition can draw on the lesson. When a choice leads somewhere painful, regret stamps the experience with a feeling that says, avoid this. And when a choice leads somewhere good, relief and satisfaction mark it with a feeling that says, return here. These emotional aftermaths become part of the store of bodily knowledge that intuition consults, so that the next time a similar choice appears, the gut can lean away from what once brought regret and toward what once brought relief, all before conscious deliberation begins. This is how experience teaches the body. Through the felt consequences of choices, each regret and each relief, a small lesson encoded as feeling. It is the somatic marker idea in living form, the way past outcomes attach themselves to future intuitions, steering you by the quiet residue of how things went before. Your gut feelings about decisions are shaped in large part by the accumulated regrets and reliefs of a lifetime of choosing, a vast emotional record of what worked and what wounded. This is why people often grow wiser in their choices over time, not through conscious calculation, but through this slow emotional learning, the body gradually accumulating the felt lessons of experience and offering them back when the moment comes as the quiet inclination of the gut. Sometimes a choice is shaped not by the past, but by an imagined future, and the steering happens before you have consciously weighed anything at all. The anticipation of regret, a faint preemptive sense of how badly you might feel if a choice goes wrong, can tilt a decision before deliberation has even begun. You feel in advance the shadow of a possible regret, and the feeling nudges you away from the option that might produce it, all below the level of conscious reasoning. This is intuition, working with imagined futures, projecting forward to sense how a choice might feel afterward, and using that anticipated feeling to guide the choice now. It is why people often avoid options that carry the risk of deep regret, even when those options might be reasonable. The mere anticipation of the painful feeling, enough to steer them clear. The body runs a quiet simulation, sensing the emotional consequences of a path not yet taken, and reports the result as a pull toward or away. This anticipatory steering can serve you well, sparing you choices you would have regretted, the gut sensing danger in advance. But it can also mislead, making you overly cautious, avoiding good options, because the imagined regret looms larger than it should. Either way, it reveals something striking about intuition, that it works not only from remembered experience, but from imagined experience. sensing the emotional weather of futures that have not happened, and quietly steering you by feelings about events that exist so far only in the mind. We have traveled a long way into the gut feeling, and it is worth pausing to gather what we have found, because the picture that emerges is clear and quietly profound. A gut feeling is not magic. It is not a message from beyond, not a mystical sense, not a faculty that bypasses the ordinary workings of the mind. It is memory, emotion, and perception, the same materials all thinking is made from, working together faster than awareness can follow. The memory supplies the patterns gathered across a lifetime. The perception reads the present situation, often catching cues below conscious notice. The emotion weighs and tags, lending the verdict, its felt quality, its pull, and its urgency. And all of this happens beneath consciousness at a speed thought cannot match, so that the result arrives as a feeling rather than a reasoned conclusion complete before you knew it was forming. This is what the gut feeling actually is, the visible tip of an enormous and ordinary process, the mind doing its constant work just below the surface and handing you the answer without showing its labor. There is no need for the supernatural to explain it. The natural explanation is remarkable enough that your mind is forever working faster and deeper than you can see, gathering and reading and weighing and offering you, in the form of a feeling, the fruit of labor you never witnessed. The gut feeling is not mysterious because it is magical. It is mysterious because so much of your own mind works without you. There is a temptation when faced with something as striking as intuition to reach for the mystical, to imagine that such uncanny knowing must come from some special faculty beyond ordinary explanation. But the truth requires nothing mystical at all, and that ordinariness is, in the end, what makes intuition so remarkable. Every piece of it can be accounted for by the natural workings of the brain and body, by memory and pattern and perception and emotion, by the vast hidden processing that runs constantly beneath awareness. There is no need for anything supernatural to explain how you sense danger before you see it, or read a room before a word is spoken, or feel a decision is right before you can say why. It is all the ordinary mind working in extraordinary ways below the surface, and somehow this makes it more impressive, not less. The mystical explanation, had it been true, would have placed intuition outside us, a gift from elsewhere. The natural explanation places it squarely within, revealing it as the everyday achievement of your own astonishing mind, doing more than you ever consciously know. The wonder does not disappear when the mystery is explained. It deepens, transferring from an imagined external source to the real internal one, from magic to the genuine marvel of how much your mind accomplishes without you. The most remarkable thing about intuition is not that it might be supernatural. It is that it is entirely natural. And natural processes, fully understood, turn out to be more wondrous than any magic we might have imagined in their place. If there is a true mystery in intuition, it is not the mystery we usually imagine. The real wonder is not that the gut feeling comes from somewhere beyond the mind, but that so much of your own mind operates entirely without you, beneath the small lit circle of your awareness. Consider how strange this is when you sit with it. You experience yourself as the one doing the thinking, the conscious self in charge, deciding and reasoning and choosing. Yet beneath that experience, vast machinery hums away. Unseen processing, pattern matching, weighing, perceiving, doing, the great bulk of the actual work, and handing your conscious self only the finished results. The gut feeling is one of the clearest glimpses you get of this hidden labor, a moment when the underground work surfaces as a feeling you did not consciously produce. It reminds you that the conscious self is not the whole of the mind, but a small part of it, a narrow window onto a far larger process that runs mostly in the dark. This is the genuine mystery, more humbling and more profound than any tale of the supernatural. You are far more than the part of yourself you can observe. Most of what you are works without your watching, gathering and knowing and deciding below the threshold of awareness, and the gut feeling is the quiet evidence of it. The brief surfacing of the enormous unseen mind that does so much of your pay, living for you, and asks no recognition in return. Here is a fact that quietly rearranges your sense of yourself. The overwhelming majority of what your brain does never reaches consciousness at all. The processing of vision, the maintenance of balance, the regulation of the body, the constant pattern matching against memory, the reading of faces and situations, nearly all of it happens below awareness, in the dark, without you ever knowing. Consciousness is the exception, not the rule, a small bright window onto a vast unlit interior where most of the real work is done. Your awareness receives only the finished products, the conclusions and the feelings, while the labor that produced them stays hidden. Intuition is one of the few moments when something from that hidden interior surfaces into awareness in a recognizable form. When the underground processing breaks through and delivers a feeling you can notice, a gut sense you can attend to. It is a brief glimpse of the unconscious mind at work, a rare opening onto the enormous hidden labor that runs your life beneath your knowing. This is why intuition can feel so strange, arriving from nowhere, because it comes from the part of you that is always working but never seen. The gut feeling is a messenger from the dark interior, a moment when the unconscious speaks to the conscious, offering up a small piece of all that it has been doing, unwatched beneath the surface of the self, you know. Imagine your conscious self as a small island, lit and visible, the part of your mind you experience directly, the place where your sense of being you resides. Now imagine the ocean around it, vast and dark and deep, stretching far beyond the island in every direction. That ocean is the unconscious mind, the immense expanse of processing that surrounds and supports the small lit island of awareness, doing the great bulk of the work while remaining forever beyond direct sight. This is closer to the truth of what you are than the comfortable assumption that the conscious self is the whole of the mind. The island is real and precious, the seat of your awareness and your deliberate thought. But it is small, surrounded by and dependent upon the vast ocean it floats in, drawing constantly on processes it cannot see and does not control. Intuition is what happens when something from the ocean reaches the shore of the island, when the deep unseen processing sends up a feeling that washes onto the small beach of awareness, bringing news from the depths. To honor your intuition is, in a sense, to honor the ocean, to acknowledge that you are far more than the island you experience yourself to be, that beneath and around your small conscious self lies a vast and capable mind that does most of your living for you. The gut feeling is the tide from that ocean reaching the island, reminding the small lit self that it is not alone and never was. There is a way of seeing your gut feeling that lends it a quiet dignity. When you trust your intuition, you are not trusting some random impulse or arbitrary whim. You are trusting the accumulated wisdom of every moment you have ever lived. The entire record of your experience distilled and offered back to you as a feeling. Every situation you have encountered, every face you have read, every choice and its consequence, every pattern absorbed across the whole length of your life. All of it has been gathered into the deep store that intuition draws upon, and the gut feeling is that vast accumulation speaking. To listen to it is to listen to your own history, to the sum of everything you have learned, much of it long forgotten by your conscious mind, yet retained in the patterns that shape your instinct. This is why intuition deserves respect, even as it deserves questioning, because behind it stands the whole of your lived experience, an enormous reservoir of knowledge you could never consciously hold. When the gut speaks, your past is speaking, the accumulated learning of a lifetime rising to meet the present moment. There is something moving in this, that nothing you have lived through is truly lost, that it all contributes in some quiet way to the wisdom of your instinct. Your intuition is in a real sense your whole life talking to you, offering the distilled lessons of everything you have been through. In the only language fast enough to deliver them all at once, the language of feeling, you have forgotten almost everything. The vast majority of your experiences, the countless ordinary moments that made up your days, have slipped from conscious memory, gone beyond recall. And yet none of it was entirely wasted, because much of it left a residue, a trace that lingers in the patterns that shape your intuition even after the memory itself has vanished. Every gut feeling carries this residue, the quiet sediment of experiences you can no longer consciously remember, contributing to the feeling without your ever knowing they are there. The stranger who reminds you below awareness of someone you knew long ago and have entirely forgotten. The situation that feels somehow familiar because it echoes one you lived through years past and can no longer recall. The preference shaped by an encounter you forgot the moment after it happened. All of this forgotten experience persists in your intuition, woven into the feelings that guide you. The past, influencing the present through channels memory, has long since closed. There is something tender in this thought, that your forgotten life is not truly gone but lives on in the shape of your instincts, quietly informing the feelings you have today. The gut feeling is, in part, a message from your forgotten self, the accumulated residue of all you have lived and lost to memory, still present, still working, still offering up its quiet contribution to the way you sense the world, long after you have ceased to remember it was ever there at all. Think back to a moment when your instinct proved right, when you felt something strongly, and the feeling was vindicated, when the gut knew before you could explain how. Perhaps you sensed a person was not to be trusted, and time proved you correct. Perhaps you felt a decision was wrong despite every reason to make it, and were grateful later that you listened. In that moment, what was actually happening beneath the mystery of it was almost certainly your past speaking to your present. The instinct that served you well was drawing on experience you had gathered and largely forgotten, recognizing a pattern your conscious mind could not name, reading the present situation through the lens of everything similar you had lived before. The feeling came from nowhere, only in the sense that you could not see its source. Its true source was you, your accumulated experience, your absorbed patterns, your forgotten encounters, all of it surfacing in the instant to guide you rightly. When your intuition is right, it is rarely magic and rarely luck. It is most often your own deep knowledge, gathered across a lifetime and delivered faster than thought, your past quietly reaching forward to help your present. The next time your gut proves right, you might pause to recognize what really guided you, not some external gift, but the long accumulation of your own lived experience, speaking to you across the years, in the only voice quick enough to reach you in time. There is a kind of remembering that has nothing to do with conscious recollection, and intuition is its voice. Your conscious memory holds only a small fraction of what you have experienced, releasing the rest, letting go of the endless ordinary moments to make room for living. But something in you holds on differently, retaining the patterns and the lessons even as the specific memories fade, keeping the residue of experience after the experience itself has been released. Intuition is this deeper, remembering the part of you that holds what your conscious mind has let go, that retains the shape and the meaning of experiences whose details you have forgotten entirely. When you sense something without knowing why, it is often this hidden memory at work, recognizing a pattern from experiences your conscious mind discarded long ago, remembering on your behalf what you, yourself, cannot recall. This is a strange and beautiful division within you, between the conscious mind that forgets so much, and the deeper mind that quietly keeps the lessons, between the self that lets go and the self that holds on. Your intuition is the keeper, the part that remembers what awareness has surrendered, that carries forward the wisdom of forgotten days. It means that nothing you have learned is wholly lost, even when you cannot remember learning it, because some deeper part of you retained the lesson, and stands ready to offer it back as a feeling when the moment calls for the knowledge you no longer consciously possess. Here is a quiet truth about living well with your intuition. The clearer your knowledge of yourself, the better you can read what your gut is actually telling you. Intuition speaks in feelings, and feelings can be tangled, mixed with fear, with desire, with mood, with the residue of old wounds, so that the message is not always easy to interpret. A feeling of dread might be genuine intuition, warning you of real danger, or it might be old anxiety speaking, a fear that belongs to your past rather than your present. A pull toward something might be wise instinct, or it might be a craving, a bias, a wish dressed up as a feeling. Telling these apart requires self-knowledge, an honest understanding of your own patterns, your fears, your tendencies, the ways your feelings can mislead you. The better you know yourself, the more accurately you can read your own gut, separating the trustworthy signal from the noise of your own reactions, hearing what intuition is truly saying beneath the static of your particular fears and wishes. This is why the inward work of knowing yourself is not separate from the work of trusting your intuition, but essential to it. To read your gut well, you must know the instrument it speaks through, which is you, with all your particular distortions and blind spots. The person who knows themselves honestly can listen to their intuition clearly. The person who does not may mistake their fears for wisdom and their wishes for the quiet voice of the gut. It is not enough to have intuition. Everyone has it, the fast knowing that rises below awareness in all of us. What separates wisdom from folly is not the presence of the gut feeling, but the judgment of when to trust it. And this judgment matters every bit as much as the intuition itself. A strong feeling followed in the wrong domain can lead you badly astray, while the same feeling, followed where it has earned reliability, can guide you truly. The skill, then, is discernment, learning to recognize the conditions under which your gut deserves trust and the conditions under which it deserves suspicion. Trust it in the areas of genuine, hard-won experience, where the patterns it draws on are real and tested. Hold it more lightly in the unfamiliar, the rare, the situations your experience never prepared you for. Question it, especially where bias might be hiding inside it, where a feeling about a person might be prejudice in the guise of insight. And weigh your own state, the tiredness or stress or mood that might be coloring the verdict. This discernment is itself a kind of wisdom, perhaps the most important wisdom about intuition there is. The knowledge, not of what to feel, but of when to listen. Having a gut feeling is easy and universal. Knowing when that feeling is worth following and when it is not is the rarer and more valuable thing. The skill that turns raw intuition into reliable guidance, and it can be learned slowly by anyone willing to pay attention to when their gut has served them and when it has led them wrong. There are two ways to get intuition wrong, and they sit at opposite extremes. One is to dismiss the gut entirely, to trust only cold reason and treat every feeling as noise to be overridden, which leaves you, as we have seen, unable even to decide, lost in endless deliberation, deaf to the rapid wisdom the body offers. The other is to follow the gut blindly, to obey every feeling without question, which leaves you at the mercy of bias and mood and the confident errors of intuition in unfamiliar territory. The wisest minds avoid both extremes. They neither dismiss the gut nor follow it without thought, but do something harder and better. They listen and then question. They take the gut feeling seriously, honoring it as real information drawn from deep experience, and then they examine it, asking where it came from, whether it can be trusted here, whether reason confirms or contradicts it. This is the mature relationship with intuition, neither rejection nor blind obedience, but a thoughtful partnership, the gut proposing and the mind considering the feeling offered its hearing and then weighed. It asks more of you than simply trusting or simply doubting, requiring you to hold both the feeling and the questioning at once, to value your intuition and interrogate it in the same breath. But this is where wisdom lies, in the listening that takes the gut seriously, and the questioning that keeps it honest, each balancing the other, neither alone allowed to rule. If you carry away a single guide for when to trust your gut, let it be this. Your intuition is most trustworthy when it speaks from genuine experience, and most suspect when it speaks from fear. When a feeling arises from deep, relevant experience from a domain you truly know, from patterns earned through years of practice and feedback, it deserves real weight. For it is the distilled wisdom of all you have learned. But when a feeling arises from fear, from anxiety, from old wounds and present dread, it deserves more caution, for fear distorts, magnifying dangers that are not there, narrowing your view, speaking with an urgency that has little to do with truth. The same gut that reads a situation wisely when calm can mislead you badly when frightened. The fear masquerading as intuition, the anxiety dressed up as insight. Learning to tell the two apart is perhaps the most useful discernment of all. Asking of any strong feeling, whether it rises from knowledge or from fear, from experience or from dread. The feeling that comes from genuine experience tends to be steady, quiet, a calm sense of how things are. The feeling that comes from fear tends to be loud, urgent, charged with alarm. Not always, but often enough to guide you. Trust the quiet voice of experience. Be wary of the loud voice of fear. And in the difference between them lies much of the wisdom of knowing when your gut is worth following and when it is leading you astray. We come now near the end of our exploration, and to a recognition that reaches beyond intuition itself. To understand your gut feeling truly is to understand something profound about what you are, namely, how much of you lies beneath the surface of your awareness. The gut feeling is a window, and what it reveals when you look through it honestly is the vast hidden depth of your own mind, the enormous processing that runs below consciousness, the deep store of memory and pattern, the constant, unseen labor that produces so much of your experience. You set out perhaps to understand a curious feeling, the sense of knowing without knowing why. And in following it down, you arrive at a larger truth, that the conscious self you take yourself to be is only a small part of the whole. That beneath it lies a vast and capable mind, doing most of your living for you, unseen and unthanked. This is the deepest lesson the gut feeling has to teach, not really about intuition at all, but about the architecture of the self, about how much of you operates in the dark, beyond the reach of your watching. To understand your intuition is to be humbled and amazed by your own hidden depths, to recognize that you are far more than you can observe, that the small lit room of your awareness opens onto vast and shadowed halls you will never fully see. The gut feeling in the end points past itself toward the great unconscious mind that is most of who you are. And so we arrive at the heart of it. Listening to your intuition when all is understood is learning to hear the quietest and oldest part of your own mind, the deep ancient layer beneath conscious thought, the part that knew how to read a face and sense a danger long before you had words for any of it. This is the part that evolution shaped across countless generations, the part that gathered the patterns of your particular life, the part that holds what your conscious mind has forgotten, and works while you sleep and speaks in feelings, because feeling is older than language. To listen to it well is not to obey it blindly, nor to dismiss it, but to learn its voice, to grow familiar with how it speaks, to honor its wisdom, and to know its limits, to hear it clearly enough to tell its genuine knowing from its fears. We began with a simple question, why your gut feeling is often right, and the answer, it turns out, is that your gut feeling is most of your mind working faster and deeper than you can see, offering you the distilled wisdom of all you have lived and all you have inherited, in the only voice quick enough to reach you in the moment you need it. It is right so often because it is in the end you, the deepest and oldest you, speaking quietly beneath the noise of conscious thought. Learn to hear that voice, and you learn to hear yourself, the whole of yourself, far more than the small part you knew. Thank you for spending this time here with me. Until next time. Good night.